Hello, I'm Robbie Sanford. I would like to speak to you today on the subject of how males and females adjust to marriage. Over the last 3/4 of a century, marriage and family have gone through radical changes. From the traditional marriage to modern variations of traditional marriage to innovative styles of marriage, including gay marriage, cult marriage, and some not so easy to define. Traditional marriage were characterized by fixed gender roles. Let's start by looking at the traditional male. Some stereotypes associated with the traditional male role includes a man's power and aggressiveness, fearlessness, guarded emotions, rejection of feminine qualities, driven by success, and remoteness with other men. These fed into gender roles inside and outside the home. Fixed gender roles may look very different in different cultures. For example, the traditional wife stayed at home, kept house, and reared children. This may look different depending on social status and ethnicity or race, but the dynamic is the same. Next, we will look at a transitional era that began in the sixth decade of the 20th century and remains to a great extent today. I refer to this era as confused because of the difficulty people had adjusting to the rapid change it introduced into society. Several factors contributed to this change. One was the feminist movement. It was widely misunderstood as a movement to give women power over men. The movement faced a great deal of resistance from the religious right, such as feminism encourages women to leave their husbands, kill their children, practice witchcraft, destroy capitalism, and become lesbians. But it also received a great deal of support, stemming from Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique. Running concurrent with the feminist movement was the so-called sexual revolution, introduced by the pill. This form of birth control liberated women's sexuality, which in turn gave men more sexual freedom. This led to changes in values related to sex. The chart shows a change in attitude toward couples living together with no intention to marry. The blue line shows percentage of those say it's all right. The yellow line have no opinion, and the red thinks it's wrong. Today, many people have an ideal of virginity until marriage, and many think that there is something wrong with a person who does not become sexually active as early as mid to late teens. Additional confusion of marriage roles came with the changes in the economy and the advent of the consumer society. This necessitated 2 incomes for most families, which put women into the workplace. Women had become accustomed to work outside the home during World War II. From the beginning of the modern era, women were not treated as equals to men in the workplace. This inequality was an extension of the inequality that existed in the traditional marriage, and in turn it fed back into the marriage, adding to the confusion of gender roles. Although these movements addressed important issues, they helped to create uncertainty as to how men and women would adjust to marriage. In addition to these historical movements, a couple of social constructs contributed to additional challenges to marriage adjustment. One is the fairy tale idea that persists in the minds of children of the princess and her charming prince. The fashionable wedding today appears to be an enactment of this fantasy. Additional challenges to satisfactory adjustment are negative pictures that emerge in time. People become aware of their incompatibilities. They fall out of love. They feel trapped in their marriage. Egalitarian marriage faces resistance from culture and religion. Religion may support egalitarian marriage, but Concepts such as the husband is the head of the wife may be detrimental to the marriage. Flexible gender roles support a successful contemporary marriage. I refer to this as a pragmatic approach. Whatever works. Mutual affirmation of the value of a person must provide the foundation for this approach. The pragmatic approach to gender roles in marriage identifies what needs to be done. Here, we're looking at household chores. Using the art of compromise, a couple establishes a division of labor based on talents, skills, and interests. Because of the adaptive characteristic of this approach, I call it a no-model model. Flexibility is the key to pragmatic approach. The very thing that Charles Darwin said about biological species can be said about marriage. It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. We may reinstate this as a continuous celebration of marriage. One choice, I do, by itself will not lead to positive adjustment in marriage. A successful marriage is a series of choices. I choose you, I choose you, I choose you. In conclusion, please note, we're not in Kansas anymore, neither are we in Oz, and there is no one to grant us our wishes. Successful adjustment in marriage is mission possible, and like other successful ventures, education is the key. Education is socialization, and we learned in our first course in sociology that institutions of family and schools have the responsibility to promote positive relationships. It falls to us as professionals in the social sciences to play a significant role in this process. I think we can, in part, engage in this dimension of socialization by encouraging two things. The first is to know yourself. Of many things we need to know about ourselves is that we respond differently in our different life contexts, from family in which we grew up, to single living, living with a roommate, or living with someone in an intimate relationship, to living with a marriage partner. Secondly, we must know our partners. This means we need to know how our partner sees him or herself in life. This requires spending a lot of time together prior to making any life commitments. I think that an investment in couples counseling would be a better investment than spending tens of thousands of dollars on the reenactment of a fairy tale wedding. Successful adjustment in marriage from beginning to end requires personal qualities of transparency, adaptability, and honesty. Simply stated, love isn't enough.